Hello everyone, welcome back to today's video. But before we start today's video, I have something for you. Listen, a quick note I saw online and I'm here to read it to you because it meant a lot. It's passed a message that was significant. So I am here to share it with you all. As you know, this is not my first time of bringing it here when I see it. As long as it should definitely add value to you and I. So now focus on making progress, not perfection. That is what the article is all about. Every good thing takes time. You can't rush things. Growth is not linear, but a journey. It is a journey, one filled with challenges and opportunities to push you to your destination. No one can do it for you, and there will always be days you want to give up, but keep going. Even when there are days you want to give up, keep going. There are no shortcuts to get there, so you have to embrace the process. Think progress, not perfection. Allow yourself to grow in the process. Make room for failure too. Just do your daily practice and cultivate a kind heart. But bet on hard work, abandon impatience. What will come down when they are ready. Remember, consistent small steps are way better than just one big step with no further progress. When they say tiny drops of water makes an ocean, this is what it means. Consistent small steps that gives you results is better than one big step that you're not even able to take another one after that. Yeah, and reading this now, it's kind of almost the same with compounding. When they say, when in the book Psychology of Money, when we read that, okay, when you're compounding little things, you don't even know the one that will win, which is sales, you win. You don't know the one that will actually win for you. So consistent little steps is the key. Just take that step, embrace the process, keep going, and I bet you will get there. So now let's move on to our reading for today. Psychology of Money. Remember the chapter we are Save Money, the chapter 10 in the book Psychology of Money. Yeah, we read the last place we read under the chapter Save Money was about, and since you can build wealth without a high income but have no chance of building wealth without a high saving rate, it is clear which one matters more. And I kind of have my doubts about this. That is it possible to build wealth without a low income? Well, I don't want to conclude yet until we actually read everything in this book, because that is what we are here for. We are here to learn about what we don't know. But I also asked for you guys' opinion in the comment section. Yeah, I'm still waiting for your opinion in the comment section. But moving on, let's read on. More importantly, the value of wealth is relative to what you need. Say you and I have the same net worth, and say you are a better investor than me. I can earn 8% annual returns, and you can earn 12% annual returns. But I am more efficient with my money. Let's say I need half as much money to be happy, while your lifestyle compounds as fast as your assets. I am better off than you are, despite being a worse investor. I am getting more benefits from my investments despite lower returns. The same is true for incomes. Learning to be happy with less money creates a gap between what you have and what you want. Similar to the gap you get from growing your paycheck, but easier and more in your control. A high savings rate means having lower expenses than you otherwise could. Having lower expenses means your savings go farther than they would if you spent more. Think about this in the context of how much time and effort goes into achieving 0.1% of annual investment outperformance. Millions of hours of research, tens of billions of dollars of effort from professionals, and it is easy. What's potentially more important or worth chasing? There are professional investors who grind 80 hours a week to add a tenth of a percentage point to their returns when there are 2 or 3 full percentage points of lifestyle bloat in their finances that can be exploited with less effort. Big investment returns and fat paychecks are amazing when they can be achieved, and some can achieve them, but the fact that there is so much effort put into one side of the finance equation and so little put into the other is an opportunity for most people. The next one, past a certain level of income, what you need is just what sits below your ego. Everyone needs the basics. Once they are covered, there is another level of comfortable. And past that, there is basics that are both comfortable, entertaining, and enlightening. But spending beyond a pretty low level of materialism is mostly a reflection of ego approaching income. A way to spend money to show people that you have or add money. Think of it like this, and one of the most powerful ways to increase your savings isn't to raise your income, it is to raise your humility. When you define savings as the gap between your ego and your income, you realize why many people with decent incomes save so little. It's a daily struggle against instinct to extend your peacock feathers to their uttermost limits and keep up with others doing the same. People with enduring personal finance success, not necessarily those with high incomes, tend to have a propensity to not give a damn about what others think about them. Next one. So, people's ability to save is more in their control than they might think. Savings can be created by spending less. You can spend less if you desire less, and you will desire less if you care less about what others think of you. As I argue often in this book, money relies more on psychology than finance. Another one, and you don't need a specific reason to save. So people save money for a down payment on a house, on a new car, or for retirement. That's great, of course. But saving does not require a goal of purchasing something specific. You can just save for saving's sake. And indeed, you should. Everyone should. Only saving for a specific goal makes sense in a predictable world, but ours isn't. Saving is a hedge against life's inevitable ability to surprise the hell out of you at the worst possible moment. Another benefit of savings that isn't attached to a spending goal is what we discussed in chapter 7, gaining control over your time. Everyone knows the tangible stuff money buys. The intangible stuff is harder to wrap your head around, so it tends to go unnoticed. But the intangible benefits of money can be far more valuable and capable of increasing your happiness than the tangible things that are obvious targets of our savings. Savings without a spending goal gives you options and flexibility, the ability to wait, and the opportunity to pounce. It gives you time to think, it lets you change course on your own terms. Every bit of savings is like taking a point in the future that would have been owned by someone else and giving it back to yourself. Another one. That flexibility and control over your time is an unseen return on wealth. What is the return on cash in the bank that gives you the option of changing careers or retiring early or freedom from worry? I'd say it is incalculable. It is incalculable in two ways. It's one, it's so large and important that we can't put a price on it, but it is also literally incalculable. We can't measure like we can measure interest rates, and what we can measure, we tend to overlook. When you don't have control over your time, you are forced to accept whatever bad luck is thrown your way. But if you have flexibility, you have the time to wait for no brainer opportunities to fall in your lap. This is a hidden return on your savings. Savings in the bank that earn 0% interest might actually generate an extraordinary return if they give you the flexibility to take a job with a lower salary but more purpose, or wait for investment opportunities that come when those without flexibility turn desperate. And that hidden return is becoming more important. The world used to be hyperlocal. Just over 100 years ago, 75% of Americans had neither telephones nor regular mail services. According to historian Gordon, that made competition best in their own town, and they got treated like the best because they didn't have to compete with the smarter worker in another town. That's now changed. A hyperconnected world means the talent pool you compare in has gone from hundreds or thousands spanning your town to millions or billions spanning the globe. This is especially true for jobs that rely on working with your head, your muscles, teaching, marketing, analysis, consulting, accounting, programming, journalism, and even medicine increasingly compete in global talent pools. Fields will fall into this category as digitization erases global boundaries. Software eats the world. As venture capitalist Mark Andreessen puts it, a question you should ask as the range of your competition expand is, how do I stand out? I am smart is increasingly a bad answer to that question because there are a lot of smart people in the world. Almost 600 people at the SATs each year. Another 7,000 come within a handful of points in a winner take all and globalized world. These kinds of people are increasingly your direct competitors. Intelligence is not a reliable advantage in a world that has become as connected as ours has, but flexibility is. In a world where intelligence is hyper competitive and many previous technical skills have become automated, competitive advantages tilt towards nuance and soft skills like communication, empathy, and perhaps most of all, flexibility. If you have flexibility, you can wait for good opportunities, both in your career and for your investment. You will have a better chance of being able to learn a new skill when it is necessary. You will feel less urgency to chase competitors who can do things you can't and have more leeway to find your passion and your niche at your own pace. You can find a new routine, a slower pace, and think about life with a different set of assumptions. The ability to do those things when most of others can't is one of the few things that will set you apart in a world where intelligence is no longer a sustainable advantage. Having more control over your time and options is becoming one of the most valuable currencies in the world. That's why more people can and more people should save money. You know what else they should do? Stop trying to be so rational. Let me tell you why. Okay, that's another chapter entirely. Reasonable, rational. Aiming to be mostly reasonable works better than trying to be coldly rational. Hmm. Okay, reasonable equals no greater than rational. This sign. So I remember we were in primary school. Greater than, less than, and then equal to. So this sign is there. So that's reasonable greater than rational. Hmm. Should we dive into it? Yes, of course. Yes, of course. You are not a spreadsheet. You are a person, a screwed up, emotional person. You are a person, a screwed up, emotional person. It took me a while to figure this out, but once it clicked, I realized it is one of the most important parts of finance. With it comes something that often goes overlooked. Do not aim to be coldly rational when making financial decisions. Aim to just be pretty reasonable. Reasonable is more realistic, and you have a better chance of sticking with it for the long run, which is what matters most when managing money. To show you what I mean, let me tell you, this is the part I like most, the story part. You know, the author promised us 20 stories in this book, so I'm always looking forward to the stories. So now I said, let me tell you the story of a guy who tried to cure syphilis with malaria. He tried to cure syphilis with malaria. Oh my god. Is that rational or reasonable? Sorry. God. I can't stop laughing. Julius Wagner Jaureg was a 19th century psychiatrist with two unique skills. It was, oh, this it just makes sense to me. He tried to cure syphilis with malaria. Okay, okay, okay. I can't wait to learn. He was good at recognizing patterns, and what others saw as crazy, he found merely bold. His specialty was patients with severe neurosyphilis. Then, a fatal diagnosis with no known treatment. He began noticing a pattern. Syphilis patients tended to recover if they had the added misfortune of having prolonged fever from an unrelated ailment. Wagner Jauregg assumed this was due to a hunch that had been around for centuries, but doctors didn't understand well. Fevers play a role in helping the body fight infection. So he jumped to the logical conclusion. In the early 19s, Wagner Jauregg began injecting patients with low-end strains of typhoid, malaria, and smallpox to trigger fevers strong enough to kill off their syphilis. This was as dangerous as it sounds. Some of his patients died from the treatment. He eventually settled on a weak version of malaria since it could be effectively countered with quinine, that's chloroquine, with quinine after a few days of bone rattling fevers. After some tragic trial and error, his experiment worked. Wagner Jarrett reported that 6 intense syphilis patients treated with malariotherapy recovered, compared to around 3 in 10 patients left alone. He won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1927. The organization today notes the main work that concerned Wagner Jarek throughout his working life was the endeavor to cure mental disease by inducing a fever. Penicillin eventually made malariotherapy. This is the first time I'm hearing this. This is the first time I'm coming across this word. So, malariotherapy for syphilis patients obsolete. Thank goodness. But Wagner Jarek is one of the only doctors in history who not only recognized fever's role in fighting infection but also prescribed it as a treatment. Fevers have always been as feared as they are mysterious. Ancient Romans worshipped Febris, the goddess who protected people from fevers. Amulets were left at temples to placate her, hoping to stave off the next round of shivers. But Wagner Jarek was onto something. Fevers are not accidental nuisances. They do play a role in the body's road to recovery. We now have better, more scientific evidence of fever's usefulness in fighting infection. A 1 degree increase in fevers in body temperature has been shown to slow the replication rate of some viruses by a factor of 200. Numerous investigators have identified a better outcome among patients who displayed fever. One NIH paper writes, the Seattle Children's Hospital includes a section on its website to educate parents who may panic at the slightest rise in their child's temperature. Fevers turn on the body's immune system. They help the body fight infection. Normal fevers between 100 and 100 degrees and 104 degrees are good for sick children. But that's where the science ends and reality takes over. Fever is almost universally seen as a bad thing. They are treated with drugs like Tylenol to reduce them as quickly as they appear. Despite millions of years of evolution as a defense mechanism, no parent, no patient, few doctors, and certainly no drug company views fever as anything but a misfortune that should be eliminated. These views do not match the known science. One study was blunt. Treatment of fever is common in the ICU setting and likely related to standard dogma rather than the evidence based practice. Markel, director of the Center for the History of Medicine, once said of fever phobia, these are cultural practices that spread just as widely as the infectious diseases that are behind them. Why does this happen? If fevers are beneficial, why do we fight them so universally? I don't think it is complicated. Fever hurts, and people don't want to hurt. That's it. A doctor's goal is not just to cure the disease, it is to cure the disease within the confines of what is reasonable and tolerable to the patient. Fevers can have marginal benefits in fighting infection, but they hurt, and I go to the doctor to stop hurting. I don't care about double blind studies when I am shivering under a blanket. If you have a pill that can make a fever stop, give it to me now. That's the patient talking. It may be rational to want a fever if you have an infection, but it is not reasonable. That philosophy, aiming to be reasonable instead of rational, is one more people should consider making decisions with their money. Academic finance is devoted to finding the mathematically optimal investment strategies. My own theory is that in the real world, people do not want the mathematically optimal strategy. They want the strategy that maximizes for how well they sleep at night. Harry Markowitz won the Nobel Prize for exploring the mathematical trade-off between risk and return. He was the one asked how he invested his own money and described his portfolio in the 1950s when his models were first developed. I visualized my grief if the stock market went way up and I wasn't in it, or if it went way down and I was completely in it. My intention was to minimize my future regret, so I split my contributions 50-50 between bonds and equities. Markowitz eventually changed his investment strategy, diversifying the mix. But two things here are important. One is that minimizing future regret is hard to rationalize on paper but easy to justify in real life. A rational investor makes decisions based on numeric facts. A reasonable investor makes them in a conference room surrounded by co-workers who want to think highly of you, with a spouse you don't want to let down, or judged against the silly but realistic competitors that are your brother in law, your neighbor, and your own personal doubts. Investing has a social component that's often ignored when viewed through a strictly financial lens. The second is that this is fine. Jason Zweig, who conducted the interview when Markowitz described how he invested, later reflected. My own view is that people are neither rational nor irrational. We are human. We don't like to think harder than we need to. And we have unceasing demands on our attention. Is it true we don't like to think harder than we need to? Yes, it's true. But what about those overthinkers? People that can think, they overthink things. Seeing in that, okay, they also don't like it. But then sometimes they just can't help themselves. I understand. Seen in that light, there is nothing surprising about the fact that the pioneer of modern portfolio theory built his initial portfolio with so little regard for his own research. Nor is it surprising that he later adjusted it. Markowitz is neither rational or irrational, it is reasonable. What's often overlooked in finance is that something can be technically true but contextually nonsense. In 2008, a pair of researchers from Yale published a study arguing young savers should supercharge their retirement account using 2 to 1 margin, like $2 of debt for every dollar of their own money when buying stocks. It suggests investors taper that leverage as they age, which lets a saver take more risks when they are young and can handle a magnified market roller coaster, and less when they are older. Even if using leverage left you wiped out when you were young, as if you use 2 to 1 margin, a 50% market drop leaves you with nothing. The researchers showed savers would still be better off in the long run so long as they picked themselves back up, followed the plan, and kept saving in a 2 to 1 leverage account the day after being wiped out. The maths work on paper. Yeah, it's a rational strategy, but it's almost absurdly unreasonable. No normal person could watch 100% of their retirement account evaporate and be so unfazed that they carry on with the strategy undeterred. They had quit, look for a different option, and perhaps sue their financial advisor, just like Rihanna wanted to do. The researchers argue that when using their strategy, the expected retirement wealth is 90% higher compared to life cycle funds. It is also 100% less reasonable. There is, in fact, a rational reason to favor what look like irrational decisions. Here is one. Let me suggest that you love your investments. This is not a traditional advice. It's almost a badge of honor for investors to claim they are emotionless about their investments because it seems rational. But if lacking emotions about your strategy or the stocks you own increases the odds you walk away from them when they become difficult. What looks like rational thinking becomes a liability. The reasonable investors who love their technically imperfect strategies have an edge because they are more likely to stick with those strategies. There are a few financial variables more correlated to performance than commitment to a strategy during its lean years. Both the amount of performance and odds of capturing it over a given period of time. The historical odds of making money in the US market are 50 over 1 day period, 68% in 1 year period, 88% in 10-year periods, and so far 100% in 20-year periods, blah blah blah, so far and so on. Anything that keeps you in the game has a quantifiable advantage. If you view do what you love as a guide to a happier love, it sounds like empty fortune cookie advice. If you view it as a thing providing the endurance necessary to put the quantifiable odds of success in your favor, you realize it should be the most important part of any financial strategy. Invest in a promising company you don't care about, and you might enjoy it when everything is going well. But when the tide inevitably turns, boom, like when the ship sinks, when the tide inevitably turns, you are suddenly losing money on something you are not interested in. It's a double burden, and the path of least resistance is to move on to something else. If you are passionate about the company to begin with, you love the mission, the product, the team, the science, whatever, the inevitable downtime when you are losing money or the company needs help are blunted by the fact that at least you feel like you are part of something meaningful. That can be the necessary motivation that prevents you from giving up and moving on. There are several other times when it is fine to be reasonable instead of rational with money. There is a well documented home bias where people prefer to invest in companies from the country they live in while ignoring the other 95% plus on the planet. It is not rational until you consider that investing is effectively giving money to strangers. If familiarity helps you take the leap of faith required to remain backing those strangers, it is reasonable. Day trading and picking individual stocks is not rational for most investors. The odds are heavily against your success, but they are reasonable in small amounts if they scratch an itch and enough to leave the rest of your more diversified investments alone. Investor Josh Brown, who advocates and mostly owns diversified funds. I am not buying individual stocks because I think I'm going to generate alpha, that's like outperform. I just love stocks and have ever since I was 20 years old. And it is my money. I get to do whatever. Quite reasonable. Most forecasts about where the economy and the stock markets are heading next are terrible. But making forecasts is reasonable. It's hard to wake up in the morning telling yourself, I have no clue what the future holds, even if it is true. Acting on investment forecast is dangerous, but I get why people try to predict what will happen next year. It's a human nature, it is reasonable. Jack Bogle, the late founder of Vanguard, spent his career on a crusade to promote low cost passive index investing. Many thought it interesting that his son found a career as an active IFH fund and mutual fund manager. Bogu, the man who said IFE funds violate the humble rules of arithmetic, invested some of his own money in his son's fund. What's the explanation? We do some things for family reasons, Bogle told the Wall Street Journal. If it is not consistent, well, life isn't always consistent. Indeed, it really is. Number 12. Guess who can remember the chapter? The title of the chapter. Surprise! Wait, you might think I'm doing surprise for you. No, that's the title for the next chapter. Chapter 12 is Surprise! History is the study of change, ironically used as a map of the future. We're going to it. Let me see how many it is. Oh my god, it's a surprise. Then after that chapter, we have room for error. I guess we just read it at our next reading. Or do I need to ask? Like, do I need to ask from the universe where the universe is leading me to? If I open this book now and I open it right to the surprise page, then we are going to read it. Open. Surprise! Okay, I don't know who did that. But see you all at our next reading. Take care of yourself, be good, and do good. Bye!